Welcome everyone. This is the TASC Work-Based Learning webinar series. Today's presentation is titled Rethinking Local Resources, Work Exploration Overview. This is a two-part series. Part 2 will be conducted next Thursday, March 4th, same time of day. If you're attending the webinar today, you would have received an email from Eventbrite that included details on how to locate materials from today's training and to link to the transition repository. By 6 p.m. today, a recording of the presentation, as well as any related resources, will be located in the TASC Transition Repository. That's tascapp.org, titled Work Exploration Overview, or by keyword search, Work Exploration. While in the repository, you can also view resources from the several webinars we are conducting this spring by using the keyword search 2021. Now, yesterday's email also explained how you could become a member of the task force team by completing the post-webinar survey for today's webinar. So for those who are wanting to join the task force team, today's attendees will need to complete a brief survey. You will then be added to the task team and be mailed a task force gift. So look for that post-webinar survey in your email box or your inbox today at 2 p.m. Now I'd like to introduce you to your presenters for this webinar.
Avery.
From Community Access Incorporated, Jeff McCroskey, and from the Transition Technical Assistance Center, Mitch Balaban, Bev Nichols, and Betsy Peterson. Additionally, we have with us Adam Kuhn from the Transition Coordinator for Fayette County Schools, Probably got that wrong, but
you got it right.
We got Frank Ratcliffe as the superintendent of the Bluestone State Park in West Virginia, and then Ben Leadham, which is an assistant superintendent of the Bluestone State Park. And lastly, as to serve as a reminder, while the resources presented today may have been vetted by experts in the field, the South Carolina Department of Education Office of Special Education Services in no way requires the use of any of the resources provided, nor their purchase. These resources are for information purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any views, organization, product, company, or program by the South Carolina Department of Education. And Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, as Michael said, I'm Jeff McCroskey with the Transition Technical Assistance Center. And as also mentioned, we have with us today, Mitch Balaban, Bev Nichols, and Betsy Peterson. Mitch and I and some of our invited guests are going to be doing most of the talking today because you're in for a good treat next week when the B&B girls, Bev and Betsy, do the website training on March 4th. I'm told that we've kind of got a mixed audience today. Some folks that may not have experienced a work program before or participated in one, some people that are trying to get programs up and running, as well as some folks who probably have a pretty good program that they've done for a while. So what we've tried to do is kind of something for everyone. If you're just starting a program, we've got good information on how to develop job sites and get the program up and running. Conversely, if you already have a good program going, we've got some good information on some of the partnerships we're doing, especially with our state park system that is really interesting and has been beneficial for both parties. So we have a lot to cover. And as Michael said, we've invited a few friends, our friends from the state parks, and Adam Kuhn from Fayette County. I think it's usually a little more interesting and informative when you have not just people like us going on for an hour and a half about how to do it, but actually talking to some of the people that made it happen on the local level. Our state park folks have been absolutely great to work with, and Adam, who started a really, really good program in Fayette County a couple years ago. Also, last but not least, is our old buddy, Chris Napper. We're still a little bit angry with the state of South Carolina for stealing the Napper from us. He worked for our TTAC for about, I guess maybe 4 years, and in all seriousness, did a really, really good job and covered the whole state, but he was pretty much what we call a Southern West Virginia specialist. That's the coal fields. So as we talk about rural job development and some other issues, we're going to pull Mr. Napper in to say a few words, and because he could probably do this presentation as well as we do it. So we'll get started by first just giving you a little bit of information about the TTAC and what we do. I know you do some similar things in South Carolina, which we're eager to hear more about in the future, but we'll just give you very briefly some of the things we do with our TTAC in West Virginia. We provide a wide array of trainings to local school districts throughout West Virginia. There's 55 districts. We use a county district system in West Virginia where our counties are districts plus the schools for the deaf and blind and the Office of Diversion and Transition. While a lot of our trainings are helpful and beneficial for kids enrolled in special ed, kids with an IEP, there's also a lot of good material for regular ed students. This is the first of many teases about our website that you'll hear today, getting you ready for next week, but there's a lot of good information on our website, which, by the way, Jenny Lancaster, who's driving for us today, helped develop, and she's also helped with a lot of our printed materials, but a lot of good information for both regular ed and special ed kids as well in our materials and on our website. One of the key focuses, of course, is starting community-based work exploration sites. Mentioned the state parks and also the Hatfield-McCoy trails, but we also make a concerted effort just to work at any and all type of businesses in the local community. It could be a large institutional setting like a hospital, or it could be a mom and pop operation and anything in between. We also are big on strengthening partnerships. We particularly try to get people involved with our local VR services. In West Virginia, I know there's a different name in each state for VR, but in West Virginia, our rehab services, our VR people are called the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So we make a real concerted effort to get all of our teachers hooked up with their DRS school counselor if they're not already. And we've been very active in informing folks about the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act reauthorization of 2014. There is a snapshot of some of our trainings and some of our materials. Most of the materials we've developed. The transition slide guide we borrowed with permission from the state of Nebraska, and then of course the Pathways website. Here is a snapshot of some of the state parks we work with. This is a list that continues to grow because as we work with new school districts throughout the state, if there's a state park nearby, we try to hook up the teachers and students of that district with the local state park. Next, I'm going to give just a brief history of the work exploration program or why work exploration programs were developed. I'm kind of a history buff or history geek, and I always want to know when I'm listening to a presentation, why are we doing it this way? What happened, what transpired in the past to make this happen? So just very briefly, the history of work exploration in '75, long before any of us were teaching, Public Law 94142 was passed, and that was truly landmark legislation because for the first time ever, it mandated a free and appropriate public education for students, regardless of disability. One of our board members in my company, Miss Sandra Barkey, who a lot of us worked for when she was special ed director in Kanawha County, tells some real horror stories. I don't think would mind me telling you that she's about in her mid 80s, and she tells some stories about teaching during before 94142 was passed. And back then, the reality was that students with more significant disabilities simply were not allowed to go to school. Some of the kids maybe with more mild disabilities could go to school. But what would often happen back then is that parents would band together, again, the parents of kids with more significant disabilities, and rent a church basement, pay for their own transportation. Three of our TTACers, Mitch, Betsy, and I used to work for a place called Shawnee Hills, and that was a perfect case in point because the lady that started that had a daughter with Down syndrome, and they did the church basement thing until they were able to start Shawnee Hills and then eventually, of course, get kids into regular school. After IDEA, there have been several iterations of ID, or after 94142, then IDEA came along, and there have been several iterations of that. And in my opinion, there have been improvements to each, especially in as far as transition. But after IDEA was passed, it took about 5 to 10 years. And it became very clear that while it was a great thing that kids were allowed to go to school, so many kids were still falling through the cracks and the outcomes were not good. So people around the country, and predominantly one of the key figures here was a guy named Dr. Lou Brown at the University of Wisconsin, pioneered the idea of putting kids out in the community. And Lou, who we've since become friends with, great guy, he's semi-retired, but still does some trainings. He traveled the country singing the praises of getting kids in the community, not sitting back in the classroom just simulating something. So the aforementioned Sandra Barkey, our former director, I think went to a CEC conference and came back to Kanawha County years ago and said, hey, we've got to try this. So we, like many counties and school districts throughout the country, started work exploration programs as opposed to just having the kids sitting back at school simulating. After IDEA was reauthorized, something called WIOA was passed in 2014. And that was truly landmark legislation because you can see the list there, it mandated something called pre-ETS, pre-employment transition services, which they're just singing our song there with job exploration, career counseling, the work-based learning, all these. So this was just really another great thing to happen to education. And additionally, they mandated that 15% of VR monies be spent on school-age youth 14 to 21, and that the students aged 21 and under get the services and the monies are spent for them, and that the VR counselor takes the students earlier, because we've always said you can't start transition too early. Oftentimes, at least in my career, the DRS counselor gets there a little bit late, and it's almost graduation time. So by getting kids a little bit earlier, it's been a much better system. So in West Virginia, our counselors are either taking students earlier or in the process of trying to get to the younger students. And there is a definition of work exploration. It is not an official definition. It's not a federal definition. It's just our definition. And so, but since it's our presentation, that's the one we're going to stick with. But that's just a basic cut and dried definition of work exploration, the way we see it anyway. And today we're going to be following a manual we wrote several years ago. A lot of the handouts and the graphics that we're going to cover today are in this manual. Again, another reference to our Pathways WV website. This and all the other materials can be found there and downloaded. In our travels, there's a number of frequently asked questions we get, so we thought, why not just get them out toward the front of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Balaban to go over the FAQs for you.
Hello, South Carolina. We developed this frequently asked questions because as we were going out into the community, setting up new work exploration programs, there were a lot of frequently asked questions. And so I'm going to just do a quick review of them, and then later on in the presentation, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of them a little more, just to get a little more in depth on them. The first one that you're going to see on the frequently asked questions is simply what is work exploration? Well, Jeff just told you a little bit about what work exploration is. This is a really good place to start. But one of the key things I want to add about work exploration and why it's so important is students, by being involved in work exploration programs, they're not only learning skills that may carry them through into employment in the future, but they're also learning through a variety of different experiences. They are learning about the jobs they'd like to do and probably the jobs that they don't want to do. The same kind of experiences that we had growing up and going through school and puberty and all that stuff. I'm just going to go through the rest of these rather quickly, okay? The next question is, what types of businesses make good work exploration sites? Well, there's a variety of things. Jeff said we try to go into a lot of different places in the community, but places like restaurants, hospitals, retail stores, offices, libraries, grocery stores. We also use recreation centers, parks, and we're going to have some of our state park people here today. Car dealerships, greenhouses, landscaping, and nursing homes. A lot of times we take students into businesses that have different skill levels, and some places like a nursing home may have some places for students with higher abilities, higher skills to participate, as well as those students that are maybe just have a lower skill base. What students make good candidates to participate in work exploration? Well, any student with an IEP, but usually these are students that are not on a career or technical education program track, or those on a college track. A lot of times these are students that need the hands-on practical experience. Do students get paid while participating in work exploration program? Usually students do not get paid for participating, but I can tell you through experiences that I've had out there, I've had students that were hired in their senior year and paid for the work exploration time and then moved directly into a paid job upon graduation. And I've also had a couple of job sites that just paid the students while they were there for exploration, but that's a rare thing. If we go on now, how often do students go out to a work exploration site? Well, this varies totally. This is one of those things. It could be as short as a 2-hour block. It could be a multiple days. We had some students in Kanawha County that every single morning they would go out for a 2-hour block. And again, we're going to talk about some of the issues that relate to how long in setting up job sites. In West Virginia, the next question is about insurance, and yes, students are covered by insurance in the state of West Virginia. We have the state insurance called BRIM, and I'll talk about insurance a little later. And there are some forms that do need to be filled out when it relates. In West Virginia, we have an electronic form. It's an easy form, and we'll actually show you that form a little later. And what changes need to be made to an IEP? In West Virginia, it's simple. We just do a modification of the IEP. It does not require a full IEP meeting. You simply do the modification, you get the parent to sign on it, and then you're ready to roll. Also, the fact that it's in the IEP, that's another thing that helps with the insurance coverage because it's part of their educational plan. Who supervises on the job site? This is another thing we're going to talk about later, but primarily it's school staff, whether it be teachers, school aides, or other personnel. How are students transported to the work exploration site? Oftentimes it's by school bus, but here in West Virginia, we have used city bus and other means of transportation. And then the final of the questions that are on here are, is there help setting up work exploration programs? Well, here in West Virginia, the TTAC, we're the help. We do travel the state. We've been or will be in every single county in the state of West Virginia. Those that already have work exploration programs, we come around and try to assist them and enhance the program. And for those that don't have a clue yet, we come in and we start from the ground up with those programs.
In case you're wondering, that is not a West Virginia accent. Our man Mitch is from New York, but he's been with us for many years. But anyway, we're often asked, why are we so passionate about getting kids in the community? And for those of you that have programs like ours, you know the answer, because when you get a student out in the community, make a placement, good job placement, something they're interested in, you just see such amazing things happen. So often the kids that we work with in these programs are succeeding for the first time ever when they're out on the job. We all very often find that it helps kids stay in school, it prevents dropouts, and often it can also even help with behaviors. Sometimes some of the behaviors back at school are just as a result of boredom. So, getting the kids out in the community, generally we start in 9th or 10th grade in West Virginia, getting the students out. But it really, really just opens up their world. From a community standpoint, we often see in our travels, in talking to employers, that so many times they have trouble finding good people. We hear that refrain very often. You know, in West Virginia, as well as throughout the country, there's a substance use disorder problem. So people cannot pass the drug test, and often they just cannot find people with the skill sets required. So by getting more kids out in the community, trained, ready to go, it leads to employment, which helps the local community. And lastly, the state. West Virginia is a fairly poor rural state. You know, our biggest city is just 50,000 people, and there's something called the workforce participation rate. And sad to say, West Virginia leads the country in probably the worst workforce participation rate in the country. But with that said, I'm sure every state, including South Carolina, does not have 100% employment. So there's room to grow in all these areas and in all these states. But work exploration is one of the rare endeavors that is just absolutely win-win. There are no losers. The individual gains from it in self-esteem, work skills, social skills. The community benefits, as does the state. The next logical step after a county agrees to start a work program, when I say a county or a school district, that would be the teachers, the students, and the administrators all agree that, hey, this is a good idea. The next logical question is, how do we develop partnerships with the local job market, local businesses? And there's all kinds of stuff you can download or that we can share with you. It's more formalized, community surveys, interviewing employers and whatever. But the number one thing, the very best thing to find local jobs in our experience has been simply getting together with the school staff, doing a little activity called Who Do You Know? This works in cities, it works in rural areas, but it's particularly good in rural areas because in small towns, everybody knows everybody. We do the Who Do You Know activity, and invariably you get a list, a whole legal page long, legal pad filled up with ideas, because you get the teachers and the aides and other school staff together, and Mrs. Jones's husband is the manager at McDonald's, and somebody else goes to church with, works at the hospital, and on and on. So what we do, we develop the list, and then we say to the folks that know the individuals, why don't you talk to them and tell them there's a great new program that we're going to be doing, and tell them that somebody will be talking to them a little bit more about it. So that is so much easier than doing what they call in sales a cold call, where you just go and knock on a door and try to tell somebody about something because you catch them at the wrong time or they're busy, they don't want to hear it. But if their wife or somebody they go to church with says, hey, we've got a great new program, they're far more likely to listen, and you have a much greater chance of success. So once you do that, you visit the new business, you have the staff go in there, you have to educate the business a little bit. They have to educate you on what they do. They have to agree to participate, and then you want to talk to employees, answer any questions, and get a good idea on schedule. Next one is McDowell County. I'm going to let Mitch talk about this, but just a little bit about McDowell County. We mentioned Mr. Napper was our Southern West Virginia specialist, and McDowell was part of the resource purse of West Virginia, where when coal was booming, McDowell was booming, and now to fast forward you to today, in boom times, Fayette with 100,000 people, today it's under 20,000, and it's just in bad shape. But we wanted to add McDowell because even with the troubles that this small county has, we were able to start a work program. So the people that say we can't do it here, or we don't have enough businesses here, we simply do not believe. So I'll turn it over to Mitch to tell you a little bit more about McDowell, and Mr. Napper can join us hopefully on this one too.
Yeah, folks, like Jeff said, West Virginia, we do have urban areas, but we have a lot of rural areas, and work exploration can happen in rural counties. As Jeff said, the economics of McDowell County, they are in the southern coal fields. As the coal jobs were drying up, so were the businesses. The economics plunged in the area. Even their local Walmart closed down. And when we were invited to come down and speak to their special ed directors and some of the staff, and we talked about work exploration, they were all in. And so the final hurdle that we had to do was we had a meeting with the superintendent to get his approval to go forward. Well, when we sat there and we explained what it was, and he said he liked it, but he says, in this county, we're not going to be able to do that. Our economics are way down. Our population is way down. Our businesses are closing. It's not going to happen here. He said, why don't you just start off by doing things in the school? Well, we're the TTAC and we like to get things happening. And so what I said to him was, you have us. We have people here who are committed to making this happen. If you let us do this with you, we will make it happen. We'll make sure we have a work exploration program. And he just turned on the spot within a few minutes and said, yes, if you can do it, go ahead and do it. So then we went over to the school and we started talking. And again, we had talked with the special ed people and we did the who do you know? And we developed a list and we were thinking about how can we cover the students going out? And the classroom aides, they jumped into it. We would love to see our kids out in the community. We found out that there was a business and it was a grocery store that was locally owned. And so we can go in and just speak to the owners. And the people from the board office gave us their names and said we can use their names and drop that on those people and say, hey, we were sent by them. And it just so happened that this grocery store was right on the bus route between the high school and the CTE center. So transportation would have been taken care of. So in a matter of just a couple of visits down to the county, we did establish the job site. The aides fought over who was going to go out. So one went out on Tuesday and one went out on Thursday. And we had peace and the students really, really enjoyed the program. So even in a rural county where economics are not great, where businesses are not great, it doesn't mean that work exploration can't happen. And I'm going to ask Chris to come on live just to talk about one of the students that did participate in this program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mitch. And just as one of the students, because I know we're talking about this at a program level, when it comes to an individual level, this student that Mitch is referencing to was actually both of his parents were arrested. They were incarcerated in the prison system, and he was living with his grandparents. And unfortunately, both of his grandparents later that month were arrested as well. So this student ended up being homeless and was living in the abandoned buildings of the city. He was in because, just as Jeff alluded to, you're talking about a town that had 100,000 people in it, and now they have 17,000 people. So there were very many buildings that were abandoned. This student was living in one of those buildings alone and came to the attention. They got him some services, but this student started working in the work exploration program, actually learned how to read and do math inside of this program by reading the labels. The store and people would help him learn how to read that way. He was motivated to do so. It was the first time he was succeeding in the classroom. His attendance automatically skyrocketed. Eventually ended up graduating through the program and moved into a manager position and did really well. The school had a big thing for him for being able to complete. But I know we talk about processes, but if you just talk about, this whole work exploration program, you're talking about somebody entirely changing their family tree and their life. So.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, a lot of times we are asked by school systems, there are students that are not ready to go out into the community. So a lot of times we are asked, what can we do in the school? What kind of activities can we have that are related to transition and learning job skills? Well, the school does provide a lot of opportunities for students. There is all kinds of work in the cafeteria, either helping in the kitchen or out in the front. There is the office area, there's copying, there's collating, putting things in files. A lot of times students seem to generate towards the janitors, and janitors love to help. So there's helping with the janitors, helping with the grounds around the school, whether it be with the custodial staff or maybe as a class project. In some counties, and we're going to show you one later, they open up a coffee or a snack service within the school, or they help in some of our high schools around the state of West Virginia have daycares within their schools, and so they can help out with childcare. Another place, it's not within the school building, but it's also within the school system. A lot of opportunities can be for students down at the board office. We've had students working in bus garages, and we also have had students that have helped out in other schools. I've had students from the high school go into the middle school and be classroom aides. We've had students go into elementary schools and help the cafeteria staff do bag take-home. So the kids can take home meals with them at the end of the day. So there's a lot of opportunities within a school system for students to get some work experiences before they head out into the community setting.
One of the gold standards for school-based learning and school-based work is a little place called the Growling Grill at Lincoln County High School. Ricky McCormick, the special ed director in Lincoln, is very forward-thinking, and she pretty much took just a huge closet full of stored items and turned it into something called the Growling Grill. The Growling Grill was originally, I believe, for the 1% classroom, but it quickly expanded so that a wide variety of students helped, and they have job descriptions. They incorporate academics into what they're doing. They look at history. If they're making a burrito, where did it come from? Did the ancient Aztecs invent it? A number of things that they do such a good job there, and the food is so good that they've been told they cannot operate the Growling Grill during the same time period that the cafeteria is open. They also have gotten a little bit high tech and actually have an IT department where you can order online whatever you want. They list every morning what they're going to have. And an interesting thing happened to us on the one of our visits down there. We were going around chatting with the students, and this big burly kid comes up to us and said, "You know, I'm the head of the IT department." We said, "Well, that's great." He said, and then he went on to disclose, we weren't being nosy, but he went on to disclose that he was in the BD classroom. He didn't really like school. He thought about dropping out, but now that he's the head of the IT department, he really likes it and likes coming to school. So that kind of made our point earlier, where getting kids in work exploration can do so many things for them, including getting them more interested in school. So it was just a breath of fresh air talking to the kids at the Growling Grill.
One of the frequently asked questions was about how do we select students to go out into work exploration? And again, a student who has an IEP, who is not participating in the career or technical education, who is not on the college track, these all make good candidates for the work exploration program. One of the things about, and I'm going to continue just a little bit with the selection of students, is we find that selecting students that are on a modified diploma or an alternate diploma, that not only does it help with the scheduling, but a lot of times they're not limited with coursework. And so it's a little bit easier to set up a program and get it going with these students. A lot of times, though, we do have students that are working for credits. And so what we try to do is work it out so that these students can also participate in work exploration. When you talk about scheduling, also, we have to talk about frequency, okay? A lot of times it depends on staff abilities and their availability and classroom requirements. Some districts go out as little as once a week. We have found that we have some businesses that are located far away from the school, and it just doesn't make sense to make multiple trips. Also, we have those students that are crunched for credits. And maybe what we can do is we can get them out one day a week in the work exploration program. And then with good communication between the special ed teacher and the regular ed teacher, these students can be able to make up whatever work they might miss on the day they're out. But a lot of the, when you talk about transportation, going out, how do we do that? A lot of times it is school buses. Often what we like to do is piggyback with buses that are already running. A lot of our counties in West Virginia really strapped for finances. And so we try to figure out ways that are as economical as possible. We do have some students that do attend the work program on public transportation. In a town like city like Charleston, we do have a KRT, which is a major bus system. But even in some of our most rural counties, we do have small bus systems that run. Up in Gilmer County, we have the Little Kanawha bus that runs, and we have students very economically, $1 a head per trip, that go out to the local hospital using public transportation. In some cases, the job coach has been known to use their own personal vehicle. A lot of times, a county will provide the job coach with a county vehicle. This could be something that is from the county office, or a lot of times we have a few counties that are using vehicles that are already located at the school. A lot of times there is a ROTC van, or there is a bus that's available for the band. In one case, we have the driver ed teacher taking the driver ed car and transporting the students out to one of our state parks. Now, staffing and covering for the students that are going out is usually covered by teachers, aides, and bus drivers. Just about anybody that's a school employee is already listed and covered under the insurance for that county. In some counties, though, they have school volunteers. And in one county, we have one that actually goes out to the job sites with the students. These are county board approved volunteers, because when they're county approved, then they are covered by the insurance while they're out there with the students, and they understand and they're taught and trained on what to do with the students. In other cases, we actually have, we have others listed on the screen there, we have retired teachers. The teachers know the students, they want to be involved, and they love the work program so much that they get involved.
Now for the fun part, hearing from our state park partners, and then Fayette County and Adam Kuhn. So just a word about the state parks before I turn it over to Frank. It's been such a pleasure working with the state parks. It's, again, win-win situation. There are a bunch of great people that want to help our students. Our students are participating with a lot of different things at the state park. We have encouraged Frank and Ben and everyone to challenge the students. Sometimes the pejorative about programs like ours is kind of the food, filth, and flowers. All they do is janitorial or foods or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, but we encouraged Frank. Frank was our very first state park, Camp Creek. He's now at Bluestone, but he was the superintendent at Camp Creek, and we strongly encouraged him. Not that he needed the encouragement. He's married to one of the top VR people in our state, who has a great school to work transition program on her own, Miss Jeanette Ratcliffe. But Frank, didn't need much training since he's married to Jeanette. And he challenged the students with everything. They did simple things. Frank can take you through the slides. They did simple things like cleanup, but then he had them building recycling bins. He even had them build a swing set, and chinking log cabins. I mean, you name it. So Frank really challenged them. And what we find with our students, more often than not, they'll surprise you when you challenge them and be able to do it. So it's been great. And with this, I'll turn it over to Frank.
A couple of things that I want to say is, yes, I did like challenging the students, and it was amazing what some could do. You can't teach desire. You can have someone that has all the potential in the world, and if they don't want to do something, there's nothing productive going to come from it. So we have to assess, give them things to do and see which one really wants to try to get it accomplished. Another thing I wanted to say is, yes, one of your segments there, you was talking about knowing people. When this was first given to me, after somebody got the right contacts, my wife didn't give me a choice. You are going to do this. So, and it's been very rewarding. We try to maintain our park very, very well. And from the simplest things to what I call micro trash to painting the signpost, some of those things are left undone by a typical workforce, a maintenance crew. To get the students out there on a regular basis and them to be able to accomplish some of these things. If you get off of Interstate 77, the southern part of West Virginia, I can tell you right now, I'm not bragging or saying anything, but Camp Creek State Park and Forest is one of the best maintained areas you'll find anywhere. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we pay attention to the fine details, and we had time to do some of the things like painting and straightening signposts and picking up that micro trash. And that was work exploration crew's main job. But they also, started to use some equipment like leaf blowers or building fences. Most of them had never, done manual type labor. They did several, we did fencing, both decorative and security fencing. Some of them got very good at it. And then the two big things that I wanted to mention, there's the recycling bin, but also they helped us with planting orchards, where we planted trees in the mountains on some of the trails. And my hopes is someday, one of them or some of them will go back and say, let's eat an apple off that tree that I planted. They also built a swing along the creek in a very relaxing area. And I'm not seeing the slides that well, but I think at one point there's a slide of this swing in a pretty area along the creek. And yeah, this is showing them picking up that micro trash and helping us after a storm that we didn't know was coming. And making the park look well maintained. But one thing that I wanted to do is take it a step further, and part of our job as park managers is building pride in your park and your community. And once you do that with your community, much of your job as far as keeping it litter clean and keeping it a safe place to be is having your community behind you. I think it's the very definition of community-based policing. Once our community takes great pride in our area, it's going to be maintained. They're going to demand it. So they built this, if we could keep on going through the slides, they built, they helped us do some of our monotonous work that freed up our maintenance crew. A lot of what we do is cutting, stacking, and bundling firewood. They could knock out a whole lot of things in a hurry. One of the young men you see there on the left of the screen is one of them that actually graduated on to some other programs that rehab has got. That this gives us a chance to look at future employees, gives us a chance, a great way to recruit. We get to see what kind of employees they are. And the one on the left is currently an employee at Camp Creek State Park. Okay, go ahead. I want to get to the pride factor. This is where they were helping build and paint and put together recycling bins. It was something that I've been wanting to do at Camp Creek for years, and we just never had the time. And with the crew helping us with that and challenging them a little bit, they were able to do 5 of these on Camp Creek. They've been very well received, by the way, as in any type of recycling program. Hey, this is something that most people have never done before, including myself, but we were doing something called chinking a cabin. And it's kind of a learning experience for the crew as well to know, I would always share with them that in the old days, in the mountains of West Virginia, it was a family affair to go chink the cabin every fall of the year so that it would keep the cold air out in the winter. Okay, go ahead with the slides. Yeah, they got to learn quite a bit about, this is where they're beginning that swing construction. And later on, they would bring their family members, their grandparents or whatever to the park and say, I built that. And that again is one of those pride instilling things that they did that it goes much deeper than them getting a work experience. They're starting to take pride in their community and their park. Yeah, just go on through those slides pretty quick. We tried to put the tools in their hand and teach them how to use them. And that's me on the left there, closely supervising, making sure they're staying safe. And this, yeah. Okay, go back to the one you had there, the final one. This is the whole crew, including myself in the middle there, standing in the back. And then the teacher, and I don't want to leave them out, because a special teacher, somebody that really takes pride and wants to see her students succeed and become a successful part of society. I don't think we could have done it without Coach K, Karen Miller. She was the teacher there that really, really took those children under her wing. I think that's pretty much the Camp Creek slides. And now that I've moved down to Bluestone State Park, I'm very pleased that they have the program here. And we actually worked with Adam Kuhn this morning that's on this video conference. And I look for this to be a very positive thing for the park, as well as the schools as well here in our community. I'm glad we've got it here.
Thank you, Frank. That was great. And this last slide, you see the finished product, but you also see a certain former employee of ours insisted that we put the Pythagorean theorem in there, because you cannot build a roof, he tells us, without utilizing the Pythagorean theorem. So anyway, thanks, Frank. It was a pleasure working with you at Camp Creek. And now on to Fayette County. Adam and Ben Leadham are going to tell us a little bit about the experiences there. But before they get started, we worked with Adam, I guess, a couple years ago, and he started a great work program in Fayette County. That normally we are kind of advocates of something called start small and build. You know, usually most of these work programs we do just a handful of students and a small number of businesses year one. But Adam, I guess, was trying to set a world record or something, because in year one, he got over, I think, 62 students out in the community. He's blessed with in the county with near 2 or 3 state parks, and it's a tourist area with the New River Gorge. So he got a lot of kids out quickly. So I'd ask Adam to talk a little bit about how he was able to start the program, getting buy-in from staff and students and administrators, and then Ben was going to talk a little bit about his experience at Bluestone working with Adam and the students. So Adam, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you all are privileged to be able to talk to all you all. My name's Adam Kuhn. I'm the transition specialist in Fayette County. I work at the district level, overseeing basically all the special education programs at the high school level. I'm here with Mr. Brandon Wicklon, who's the job coach. He actually has to step out and pick up his child from preschool. And I'm also here with Miss Stacy White, who's the principal of Meadow Bridge, but she had to step out because the life of a principal never stops. So they're going to pop back in just in a minute, hopefully. But I do see you all. I have the slides here. So if you all want to go through, and I'll just go through each slide and just explain as we go some of the things that we've accomplished. We have 2 state parks, Hawks Nest State Park and Bluestone State Park, as we've already met their staff already. We started off with those 2 state parks, and we branched out over the last 3 years to restaurants, retail, some just some city governments, city parks, city offices, and just various locations in our county. The state parks are our, what I would call our anchor locations. They've been great to work with. I've worked with Ben Leadham throughout this project. He's been the assistant superintendent at Bluestone since we began. I do want to tell you a story that kind of sums up what Jeff and Mitch told you earlier. There's a young man in this photograph right here who attended the work program in our first year. And we found out early in that school year that he was homeless and living in a tent. Before winter and early winter, he got into a small home, but he naturally became the leader of that work crew. And he was, I'm going to speak for Ben here, but he was a favorite at Bluestone State Park. And he has gone on. Let me backtrack for a minute. The first meeting that I ever had with this young man, I had to kick him out of school for some discipline issues. So he went from that and also being homeless. And eventually he at the end of the year, he graduated high school and is now working for a tree cutting company, has traveled all across the country, making overtime, pretty much all the time. So he has a really good living for himself. So if you want to know the power of what these programs can do, this is it in a nutshell. But as Frank has talked about, a lot of the maintenance that his staff is not able to get to at Bluestone or at the various parks that we have throughout West Virginia, we're able to help out with. You can flip through the next couple slides there. Some of the maintenance that they're not going to likely get to, leaves are always an issue. What Frank called micro trash. That was what we worked on, in fact, this morning. You can keep going there. I will say with this photograph, and you see it really exemplified there, is the ability for students to take a leadership role in an environment that they are, I would say, more well suited based on their individual skill sets. You have students who take leadership roles at the job site that you'll never notice in the school setting, because they're just wired up to go out and do the hands-on work, and they enjoy working with the park staff like Frank and Ben and your other business leaders. For some reason, the people outside of the school environment that are out in the community leaders are able to connect with them in ways that sometimes our teachers and administrators can't do. So you can go ahead and go forward, and go forward there. And I'll stop right here just for a second. This is the last few slides were at Bluestone State Park, which if you all would ever like to see the program in action, take a weekend trip and come up to West Virginia and visit us, and we'd love to show you around. But this is Hawks Nest State Park. And you notice there the kids in the middle of the screen, they're in red and khaki outfits. This is another school in our county, Midland Trail High School. And there's a separate program, a separate grant from the TTAC and the work exploration programs called Graduation 2020 through the West Virginia Department of Education. And each school was given an allotment of money that participates in the program. And the principal at Midland Trail High School, he took the initiative to buy his students that are in the work exploration program Carhartt brand outfits. So if you go forward one slide, please, and you see them here on the left, everything those kids are wearing were bought by the school and at this principal's leadership. And so they had all weather gear throughout that year, and they've kept this gear throughout the years. And I will say the students that participate in this program, many of them don't have the means to purchase this kind of equipment. So being able to use your funds from different sources to help promote the program is very helpful. And if you notice there on the right, that's another school, Fayetteville High School, which has since consolidated. Midland Trail and Fayetteville are arch rivals, or they were arch rivals. So they sort of used that rivalry, and Fayetteville also purchased gear for their students as well. So these students not only are going out into the job site, in some programs, not all schools are able to do that, but these students that went out they look very professional when they were out. So being able to pull some of those additional grants is very helpful. From the district level, as far as setting up the programs, I worked with the principals to set up the programs. And at that time, we had 5 high schools in our county, and we have 3 high schools now. All 5 principals were bought in. If your principal is bought in, I can almost guarantee you the program will succeed, because the principal will make sure that the job coach is doing their job, is supervising the kids, and so on and so forth. Someone put in the chat box about transportation, We have designated bus routes. I work closely, and part of my job description is to work with the transportation department. So we have designated vocational type runs for these programs throughout our county. At this particular school, we have 2 designated per week that go to Bluestone State Park and in the other sites throughout our county. So it's been very, very good working with the transportation department about, with transportation issues. And we haven't really had any issues with transportation. Some of the other suggestions that Mitch talked about as far as transportation, if your county allows, for example, private vehicles or county cars, that's definitely an option. But we have designated school bus routes for those. As far as teacher buy-in, it's good to have that teacher who is able to think outside the box, who is really good with differentiation, isn't afraid to break the mold, so to speak. So picking your job coach, that's an important choice. A lot of times in my experience, sometimes that unorthodox teacher is the one who is really strong on the job site. So you can go on through the slides there. That's Bluestone State Park. Once again, they were doing work like that this morning with the leaf blowers. You can go on. This is a shot of at Hawks Nest State Park where they fixed and repaired their Christmas ensemble. That was an excellent task for those students there. You can go ahead and go on. Another shot there of Bluestone State Park with micro trash earlier this school year at their lakefront. And I think we have one more slide. And that's the lodge at Hawks Nest State Park with the indoor housekeeping. So we have a variety of tasks that we've been able to accomplish throughout our almost 3 years in the program. If you all have any specific questions for me at the district level, working with principals and teachers, I'd be happy to answer those throughout the duration of this program. You can just put those in the comment box. I'd be happy to address those. But Ben, I'll turn it over to you, and you can fill in some of the gaps with what we've done so far.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to get my video back on.
It's on.
Okay. Is my video on too? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We can hear you good, Ben.
Are you all able to see me yet? Okay. All right. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this call and share my experiences with the program. Like Frank said too, it's a really great program, and as Jeff said in the beginning, it's very beneficial to both parties, both the parks and the students. I think personally my favorite part of the program is watching the students grow. A lot of them, when they first came on board and started working, some of them were more shy and not really open to working with certain things like the backpack blower has been mentioned a couple times. I'd really like to see the students work with the backpack blowers, because at first they were pretty intimidating to some of them. But then, once we encourage them to start it and use it, they kind of fell in love with it. I think a lot of them wanted to go home and get their own backpack blower. But I think this program, another thing it does is it really empowers the students and gives them confidence that they'll be able to use in the future, whether that be go to a trade school or enter the workforce or go to a college. So that's something I really like to see as well. We've also tried at the parks to take the opportunity to share with the students more than just, helping out with tasks we need here at the park. We've tried to show them, when you fill out a job application, this is the kind of things you want to do. And because I think it's good for them to hear from the workplace on things like that, not always just educators, because I think when they hear it from us as well, it may hit home with them more in that manner. So we've tried to help them out with things like that that will benefit them in the future after they're done with their school. We've also had several students that we would have loved to have hired and brought on to the park. It was just a matter of it was a little bit too far for them to travel every day. But we made sure to let those students know we would stick out their neck for them, and we'd be more than glad to be a reference for them if they wanted to try to get on at another state park that was closer to home for them. So and another thing I think this program does, that it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what, if they worked at a state park or if it would be, at a city office or a city park or a business. I think it helps give the students an extra sense of ownership in their community, because it helps them buy in. And, a lot of the students had never been to Bluestone State Park, but I think it really instilled a sense of pride in their state and their state parks. And I think it's something they'll long remember and hopefully come back and visit. And I think that was a really good thing too. So I think that's really all I have. But yeah, it's an awesome program, and I really hope South Carolina goes forward with it, because it's a great thing.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to move on. Okay. I'm going to move on real quickly. We're getting a little crunched on time. The last slide you saw was Chief Logan State Park. We have 2 different schools in one county going there. That was a first day picture. And the one thing that I want to talk about is student selection. On that first day going out to that park, we try to make sure on the first day, and when we going out to a new location, that we pick good candidates. We put our best foot forward. We want things to be successful. I'm going to move on real fast. This is the Hatfield-McCoy trails. This is motorized trails that go out through the southern part of West Virginia. It just so happens this high school, these students, this is their first day. Their high school is located between a trailhead and a connector. First day they went out and they just did litter pickup, but they actually come by and pick up the students in side-by-sides and four-wheelers, and they spend their time out on the trails actually doing trail maintenance.
Following is just the next 2 or 3 slides are our attempt to tie what we're doing in the community to the college and career readiness standards. So we'll just go through these in the next 3 or 4. Just wanted to be more formal in what we're doing in the community, and tying it to the various CCR standards that West Virginia is required to follow. So just go ahead and do all those, Jenny. And that's just housekeeping, just sample tasks.
Okay, guys, really quick, grading. Some schools require that there be a grade for the work exploration program. Some simply use a pass-fail. Others, to assign a letter grade, have developed daily score charts where a student gets a number every day for participation. So there is a reason for giving a grade according to their work on a daily basis. And we've also found ways of assigning credits either as a elective class or on the CTE. We can develop a class, write it up, get it approved by the county board, and they can offer credit for it that way. This is an evaluation form that we used in Kanawha County. What we like about this form, it lists job duties on the right. It's just a list. It has a place to write a narrative on the bottom where you can actually list some of the things that the student does and how well they do it. And then it has just a simple way of charting. The student does this sometimes, all the times, with assistance, without assistance, and also has a place for barriers to employment. As mentioned earlier, that they would have offered a job to some students, but a lot of times in West Virginia, distance travel and transportation can be a barrier to employment.
And the next slide is simply a cheat sheet we developed to help people fill out the previous form. We started using that form, and the goal was to get the form to the point where after you filled it out, you could hand it to a VR counselor or somebody, and they could have a good idea of what the person had done. We had teachers and aides who would just fill out, Johnny did a good job. Well, that doesn't tell you much. So we just did some trainings on how to properly fill out the form.
Yeah, another thing about the evaluation forms, it goes into the student's permanent file. It's there, it's proof of that you're fulfilling the requirements of the IEP. And if you're getting an evaluation from the state or the federal government on your programs, it's just nice to have it in there. Next slide, please. Here's a big one, and we do have the work exploration manual. We have multiple pages on job coach roles and responsibilities. The copy of the manual is located in the pathwayswv.org website under media and printed materials. You can access the whole thing. What I want to talk about, just your role as a job coach. A lot of times when you go into the community, you are what that community sees, what that business sees. You are the teacher, and you are representing your school, your county, the whole educational system. And what you do out there in the community and on the job is what the community sees, and the people in these jobs and all these different businesses see as being the educators in their county. The first and primary thing that you have to consider is safety. When you get a new work exploration site, let's go on to skip to the next 3 slides. Again, all those were listed in the manual. Most important thing, again, is safety. Before you even take students out onto the work exploration site, you want to go out and do a site review. You want to see the things that are potentially dangerous for your students, and you want to learn the skills necessary to do that job in a safe manner. We have also, there are issues and hazards in some businesses. Some things like kitchens may have a deep fryer. OSHA requires that nobody under the age of 18 does that. So these are the safety things you have to look out for. Whatever rules are in place for those that are employed in the business. Again, if you're in a kitchen or in some businesses, you might have to wear closed-toe shoes or non-slip shoes. We have in some places where we have county board office members that go into a business and do a pre-check on the building and have to approve it for use. Again, I'm just moving along quickly. Let's go on. Here is a checklist that you can use. It's in the manual for going in and doing a survey of the business before you take the students out. Student training. This is the most important thing besides safety. Your job out in the community, that business in that community, that job site is your classroom. You are there to teach the skills required to do the job. Not all of our students will pick up an entire job. Maybe we have to split it up into smaller pieces and teach it step by step. You also have to, once the student is starting to learn the skills necessary, then it's time for you to start stepping back a little bit. And so what you're doing is you're working shoulder to shoulder with the student, you're assisting them and you're helping them to perform the task. But again, as they're getting more and more independent, it's your job to walk away and let them do the job. You're there for support, you continue the support. And one other thing I want to pick out of this is natural supports. These are people from the business that will often take one of the students under their wing. They'll work shoulder to shoulder with the student. And there's nothing better for our students than to be in there and be just part of the regular workforce, working with the business's staff rather than with you. And that allows you to move on and to do any other tasks, working with your other students. And you monitor and you update and you teach any new skills that might be required along the way.
Following is several different things you can use to do an appropriate job match. On the left is the old paper and pencil version. There's some pro ed materials. Our good buddy Jim Patton down at the University of Texas has written a 13 or 14 part series, or he's been part of it, on transition. He's got some great books. And then of course there's the Me Not Me on the Pathways WVU. Our coworker Betsy thinks it's WVU because she's a WVU fan, but pathwayswv.org website. But having said it's a good idea to do an appropriate job match, if you know your student well and you have a well-developed work program, we often get as much just from the student, just putting them to different job sites and learning what they like and don't like, because a lot of times younger kids will tell you they want to do X, they don't like X, they'd rather do Y. So just putting kids through a 3 or 4 year work exploration program at a couple of job sites a year, you and they can figure out what they want to do and what they're good at. So then by the senior year, you can really hone in on the interest and aptitude and try to get them a job that's a good match.
Okay, I'm just, in West Virginia, you are covered by insurance. It's a form that you fill out. BRIM is our state insurance providers. Is responsibility of somebody from the school to fill out the form. It has to be done on an annual basis. A certificate of insurance is sent to the business and to the school system. And we do not put students out until the business receives a copy of that form. This form is the next slide. This is what we use. It's a electronic form. It's sent in, and the forms are sent out to the counties and the schools. Hey, Chris, can you just take a half a minute and say how they go about insurance in the state of South Carolina?
Absolutely. In South Carolina, the guidance that we're given from the Department of Education is to contact somebody in your local school district, and they will be able to walk you through that process to make sure that the students and the staff isn't covered by the insurance.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier, we have tried very hard to make a good connection between our state VR people, the Division of Rehab Services, and our school staff. We also, I don't think Frank mentioned it, at Camp Creek and some of the state parks, we have used summer internships to get the kids paid, working with potentially eligible students and eligible students. And Frank actually hired a couple of students. So we see it, work exploration, kind of as a bridge to employment. Last thing before we show our videos, we were asked to talk a little bit about the STEP program, Student Transition to Employment Project. I could probably do a half hour to 40 minutes on this, and since we have about 2 minutes, we'll just hit the highlights. I started STEP about 15 years ago. In my duties with the school system, I coordinated the Kanawha County Schools Work Exploration Program, but I also had started a nonprofit company, Community Access. And in West Virginia, VR pays vendors to do things like support employment, life skills, things like that. So since my company was a vendor, I started hiring people like Mitch Balaban and other teachers from our work program to work with our students in the summer, get them transitioned and employed in a permanent job. That worked so well that I approached our state VR folks with the idea, why couldn't a teacher just become a VR vendor? So we piloted the project. I think since this is being archived, we'll just let you, you can look through it at your leisure, but there's definite benefits, the student benefits, because they get to keep working with the teacher that they've worked with throughout their school career. So there's great familiarity, and it just makes for an easy transition. The teachers enjoy it because they get to keep working with their students. VR counselors like it because they get students that are work ready and already have a great work history. So that's all throughout these slides, but since we're a little bit pressed for time, you can just take your time and read through there, and we'll be glad to revisit this. If there's any interest in starting something like this in South Carolina, we would be glad to help with that. So with that said, speaking of the STEP concept, yeah, that's all part of, yeah, you can just read through that at your leisure. But using the STEP concept, Mitch and I were able to place a couple of students. David Crush Bowles, I actually placed 25 years ago. I'm not old or anything, but he's still working. And Tanner Hannigan was one of Mitch's students, and he placed as a STEP vendor. So we are doing something called the Student Success Project, where we want to highlight students who have done well. So often, especially parents, young parents with a son or daughter with a disability is given kind of a bleak prognosis. So we wanted the website to be kind of an antidote to the low expectations and bad news by highlighting students of ours that have done well. So we're going to show you a couple of the videos of David Crush Bowles and Tanner Hannigan.
But he had a personality where he won friends, and they helped him.
I think David is every employer's dream.
He's driven in a good sort of way to do a good job. He's the most dependable person you'll ever meet.
David was, he had some issues when he was younger. It took him longer to learn, and he had some problems with his temper a little bit. Wasn't terrible, but it was difficult at times. And he seemed to be, even in preschool, couldn't keep up with some things with the children, particularly anything that required fine motor skills. And that is when his teacher in preschool brought someone in from Kanawha County Schools to evaluate him. And they told me that he would have some difficulties in school and that we could get help. And at 3 years old, they sent someone from the school system to our home regularly to work with David. So they said the more they did when he was younger, the better off he would be, and he wouldn't be so far behind in school.
I had countless amazing teachers through all my years of schooling, and I thank them for everything, but nobody made more sacrifices than my mother did.
Well, we were told at first that they weren't, the people who did the testing did a lot of manual type tests, and they said they didn't know that he could learn much at all. But the person who came to our home and worked with David said he'll be okay. He can learn, it's just going to take longer and a little bit more work. In schools, sometimes his behavior was a little strange, but he had a personality where he won friends, and they helped him. Especially, we had lots of children in the neighborhood, and he spent time with them, and they made sure he was okay. I think, first of all, if they're told their child is incapable of certain things, that may be so, but maybe the child can achieve some of it with time. You have to be very patient. You have to allow time. You can't make demands and threats. I felt I should stand up for him and nobody else.
Well, I met David in the mid-1990s, several years ago. And at that time, I was the coordinator for Kanawha County Schools Work Exploration Program, and David was a senior at South Charleston High. So as luck would have it, I had South Charleston as one of my schools, so David wanted to participate in our work exploration program.
Well, really helpful was Jeff McCroskey and his group. He worked with David's teacher, and he knew that David wanted to work after school. He didn't want to stay home. David made it real clear that he wanted to become employed after graduation. So we availed ourselves of a really good program that is provided by DRS, the Division of Rehab Services here in West Virginia, something called supported employment. In that model, DRS pays agencies such as mine to work with a student or a young graduate, help them do job search,
find a job matched to their interest and aptitude, and to go out on the job with them so that they can be trained and stabilized on the job. So we did that with David.
He worked at finding a very good place for David to work. It was near our home. David could not drive because of some disabilities. And he loved sports and liked to talk recreation. So we fortunately lived very near the South Charleston Community Center. And he started working there. And his job, he had a job coach who at first checked on him regularly because he was only 17 when he went to work, had never had a job except with Jeff, worked study with someone right there. And it took some coaching for a while. And as long as he had an organized list of what to do when the job coach wasn't there, he was fine. And through the years, he's really adjusted well, and I would just say it took longer, but he could catch up.
We also utilized another really good DRS program called ESES, Extended Supported Employment Services. And that's where DRS, again, Division of Rehab Services, pays just a small amount of money to agencies to check on people monthly. So we've checked on David, monthly for many years now, just to make sure things are going all right. During the follow-up, we check with the individual, we check with the supervisor, and we check with coworkers.
I first met David several years ago when I started out in the basketball gym. I believe that's when him and I first met, and I've been here for 12 years now, and I've known him ever since. We've grown to be best friends now. He's a heck of an employee. His job duties mainly is just the maintenance of the facility, inside and outside. And of course, he's always going above and beyond and doing other duties as well. I've always felt like Crush could always take on more, and I've always given him that opportunity to do that. And Crush, he's just he'll do anything you ask him to do. He's just great.
But the real key to David's success has been David. I mean, he's driven in a good sort of way to do a good job. He's the most dependable person you'll ever meet. I think in high school, well, kindergarten through high school, I think he missed 2 days of school. And that was with a death of a family member. So he's ultra dependable, all the key ingredients that employers look for. So he has carried forward that dependability and that drive that we saw in high school to his job site. And to fast forward from the mid-90s to today, he's about ready to celebrate 25 years in employment.
I always double bag my bags in case it leaks. I take pride in my work. I take my job responsibilities very seriously. My boss, Sean Zuniga, has pretty much made me his de facto administrative assistant. He takes me everywhere with him.
He's a public figure here. I mean, he's more popular than I am here. So everybody loves him. I mean, people come here just to talk to him. I mean, when he's not here, they're always asking where he's at. So that's the type of relationship he has with the people here. To me, I think he could be a supervisor, and I think he knows that too. The sky's the limit for him. I think he's capable of anything.
Well, I didn't start going to college until 2 years after I graduated from high school because I just wasn't ready for college. I needed to find out who I was and where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be. I had so many great teachers, especially at State. I mean, a lot of them would let me stay over, do homework after class, give me extra time on my tests. Some classes were harder than others, but I never ever wanted a grade that I feel like I didn't earn. I never wanted to cheat myself. I'm a big numbers guy, big numbers. Many people told me I'm one of the smartest guys they've ever met. when it comes to stats. Just remember, you can do whatever you set your mind to. You know, I've worked very hard to get to where I'm at, and there's no reason to believe they can't either. I am a very lucky man that I have the best family that a man could ever ask for, and just the greatest group of friends that I could ever ask for, and they're all nothing short of family to me. And they'll all be right here for the rest of my life.
This person testing him, and I have no idea of her name, called me to tell me that he wasn't going to be able to work because he came back from lunch too early. And then she went through all of his test results and said he couldn't really hold a job, that she thought his testing was just, he wasn't going to be able to work.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Jeff, do you want me to go ahead and share the Tanner video or put the link in?
Let's do Tanner.
Go ahead, it's just 5 minutes, then we'll be done.
He considers everybody at work here his friend.
They consider him just one of the gang, and they work well with him.
He has worked with everyone. He is very mannerly and has come a long ways.
Tanner is one of triplets. I was born very premature, 3 months early. A lot of health issues to overcome because of that. Left with a diagnosis of mild cerebral palsy and mild intellectual disability. You know, school was very hard. Thankfully, he's got a great personality, wants to do well, very sweet. So he did make it through school with a lot of help. Had to, of course, take advantage of an individualized education plan for him in school. A lot of therapies when he was young, but in school, the help of aides or his individual education plan, was a big help to get him through school.
I met Tanner many years ago. I was the teacher in the work exploration program at Herbert Hoover High School, and he participated in the program. During the work exploration program, students, usually on an IEP, go out into the community and get a varied amount of opportunities to participate in the workforce by getting non-paid work experience.
And the work study program when he was in high school was really saving grace because it helped him realize that he could work and could get a job.
He was able to participate in a program called the STEP program. This was funded by the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council and now is a part of West Virginia Division of Rehabilitation Services programming. And this allowed employees of the school system to be able to work with graduating seniors and be their job coach as they transition from school to work.
I got this job from working at the work program, and I liked it. I liked being around other people and making friends.
Having Mitch to help be with him on the job at first until he learned everything and did it over and over again until he had it, that was really valuable. He wouldn't have been able to just come right in and, get the instructions and do it himself. He really needed that help.
Mitch was very good with Tanner. He had patience and he helped him in every way that he could. Mitch is a great, great teacher.
This program was a way for Tanner to be able to, we think, utilize his strengths because all of them could do something. Everybody out there can do something, and this was a way for Smiths to assist with this. But then I think as the longer Tanner's been here, they've realized that he offers things that maybe they don't get with other young people. He's here every day.
I've had this job 9 years. I'll take break into people's car, load their groceries in the car, bring in buggies, and I clean the restrooms. I dust mop the floors, empty the trash cans.
This kind of work is repetitious. He loves it. He's never asked me if he could quit. And I think at this point he's went from being where the work-study program got him in here to where he's pretty valuable now to this organization.
The customers really love Tanner. He has been such a good person and so mannerly that there's a lot of customers likes for Tanner to take their groceries out. I have seen them ask for Tanner.
A lot of the customers really appreciate him. A lot of the older customers that he carries their groceries to the car, enjoy talking with him, and he really loves that.
I believe that the work has actually helped him socially and made him more open to communication with a variety of people, with many people. He's a regular employee. His supervisors tell us that he hardly or hasn't missed a day ever. He does take vacation time and regular leave time, but when he's supposed to be here, he's here.
Yes, I am comfortable doing this by myself. I'm independent on my own.
Benefits of a job, having a job, are so important. Self-esteem, just having somewhere to go every day and be around people in the community, and just having something to do, feeling good about what he does. You just can't put a price on the benefits of working.
And Adam Kuhn would like his principal to say something before we play or continue in the presentation.
Okay, well, we're about done. So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Adam.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Stacy White, and I'll be brief. There are just a few things I wanted to say about the work program and what I think it's been able to do for our students. Probably what sticks out most in my mind is that, we have some students that participate in this program and they haven't really found their spot in school or found their niche in school. And, if they really don't do athletics or they're not the strongest academically, they haven't found their way to shine. But our students that are participating in this program, like when you talk to them now, they'll say, well, I'm a park worker. So they're identified as that. So they've taken a lot of pride in this program and that they get to go do this. Something else that really sticks out in my mind is, I've seen students sit in the classroom and they've been resistant to their teachers with wanting to do their schoolwork. However, you get them out in the park system, which I've gone 4 different times with the students just to observe them and see what they're being exposed to, which is everything is great. But they can be resistant in the classroom, but then when they go to the park to work, they're eager to work, they're eager to please. And they very much enjoy it. It's been great with their verbal skills, teaching them social skills, learning how to handle situations professionally and, just in a manner, an acceptable manner in which those situations should be handled. They also, on the bus ride back, they'll stop and grab them a bite to eat at lunch. You would be amazed at how many students have anxiety of placing an order when they go out to a restaurant to be able to say to the waiter or waitress what their order is. But we've had students that started who really couldn't place their order that are now placing their order, operating the kiosk system, counting their money to the cashier. So it's just been a great program overall, one that I really support and I'm very thankful we have in our school. And if anybody's thinking about putting this into your school system, into your curriculum, I would highly advise it because it's been great for our students, a great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you.
So that just about concludes today's presentation. I think we're about 5 minutes over, but we would like to continue the conversation. If people have questions now or later, feel free to get a hold of us, or Mr. Nepper knows all the stuff that we know. So get with Chris and he can help you with any questions you might have. Also, as mentioned, next week, we'll follow up with the website training. So with that,
There's our contact information.
There's our contact information. If you would like to get a hold of us. Chris, do you have anything else?
Just like to thank everybody for coming out today. And obviously it was great to hear from the TTAC, Adam and Fayette County, and also our state parks. Thank you guys so much for presenting this to our state.
Our pleasure. Just keep up the good work down in South Carolina, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And we will see you back next Thursday, March 4th at 2 p.m. for part 2 in this series. And otherwise, this is resources from today can be found at taskapp.org and keyword search work exploration. Thanks, everyone, and we hope you have a great afternoon.